one thing that has really become a huge bugbear to me is when someone calls another person stupid online. Now, I'm one of the smartest people in the world, believe it or not, and I've got a fancy certificate with words to that effect. And it's never been an insecurity for me. I've always known that I'm intelligent, and I was a child prodigy and whatnot, and so over the kind of like the last year or so, I've really been looking into the nature of that intelligence and perhaps the impact that it's had on my life so far. That's been quite a journey. And one thing I've realised is not necessarily about my own personal intelligence, but also about what it means to other people. And I've discovered that it is a massive insecurity. I can't, it's difficult to put into words to explain it, because it's not an insecurity that I've ever suffered from, but it seems to be an insecurity that everybody seems to suffer from, because most other things you can do something about. I believe you can do something about intelligence, but that's by the by. But it's like if somebody is large, they can go to the gym and lose weight. If somebody's got a honker that they don't like, they can get surgery. But if you're thick, the belief is that there's not really much you can do about it. I think that there is actually stuff you can do about it, but that's by the by. And so people start to call each other stupid online out of frustration in order to try and prod that insecurity, and I don't think that that's right. The one thing that I would probably say is, or the one thing that I would point out is that there is no bigger giveaway that you are insecure about your own intelligence than calling somebody stupid online. That is a huge giveaway. So in Mensa, you have it's kind of an unspoken rule. It's a huge faux pas to crack out to other Mensans what your IQ is, and I don't think Mensans would certainly not call, I don't think they would call anybody stupid, because it's kind of like, well, whatever intelligence you have got, the fact that you have like a consciousness attached to it, that has some value. So to say that somebody is stupid, or that intelligence has no functional value whatsoever, you just wouldn't do that. So when people do start to call each other stupid, it becomes a label that they throw at other people. And when they start to throw that label at other people, it's one of those things that when you see it happen, or when it has happened in the past, when it used to happen in the school system, they used to stick that label on somebody of, oh, they're a bit dim, and then whether or not they were dim was irrelevant, because they kind of like adopted that label, never really achieved. Nobody ever pushed them for anything. Nobody ever prodded to find out what was rattling around in the old noggin. And because of that, as a consequence, they went through their entire life thinking that they were a bit dim. Certain ones who rejected that, Albert Einstein, classic example, was expelled from school I think 3 times. So yeah, that's essentially. And then what happens as well is it starts to feed into all sorts of, when they start to apply that to groups en masse, that starts to feed into all sorts of discussions and debates about social structure and function. That group is stupid, any member of that group is stupid, anyone who adopts that position is stupid. And this was certainly the prevalent or prevailing idea in Germany in the 1930s, and to a far worse degree in Russia in the 1920s, and also, you know, in Britain during the Enlightenment. You know, it was kind of like, oh well, certain people are just thick, there's no point in trying with them, because we've just called them stupid for so long that we just presume that they are stupid. And then you have George Green in Nottingham, who was worked in a windmill, and he's scribbling away his ideas down because he's just fascinated by this thing called electricity. Does a lot of sums, comes up with Green's theorem, used in pretty much everything that we use today. And he didn't send it off to Cambridge because he thought that his mate was taking the piss out of him. So this is how it feeds in, you know. And not just that, but it's kind of like, if you don't know somebody, don't try and presume how intelligent they may or may not be, because when that happens with me, I'll tell you what I do straight away. Oh, are you calling me thick? Because I'm immense, and let's jump down that rabbit hole and see who the thick one is. And I don't like being like that, you know. But it's so I would probably say that, you know, to try and keep the peace, to try and preserve a bit of social integrity, you know. Let's look at trying to mock someone's intelligence as the same way that we would do mocking their weight or mocking the colour of their hair. That we wouldn't do that, because that's not a nice thing to do. So when somebody says, oh, X is stupid, oh, X is an idiot, oh, you're dim, oh, you... let's start jumping on that. Let's start jumping on that and saying that that's not right. Instead of saying they're stupid or saying they're dim, why don't you just come with an argument against what it is that they're saying? Maybe we can have a chat about that. This is a productive way forward rather than a way forward that just tends to make things worse.